So we'll just get started with today's session. So today we are focusing on an overview of Google Classroom. This isn't going any further than I did last week when I did Google Classroom. This is just the same again. If you accessed last week, you're more than welcome to watch this as a recap. I might do things quite differently, but certainly just give you a bit of an overview and to support you with using Google Classroom. I'm just going to ask everyone to make sure that they have muted their microphones. I can do that for you as well in the Meet settings. I can go into people and just mute people, just to make sure that there's no background noise happening either for yourselves. So I'm just going to come out of this Google slide deck. That's what I've got shared on my screen is Google Slides. And let me just exit that now. So first things first, and this is, I will warn you, there's a lot in this training session. I will have to talk quite quickly. There is another session this afternoon on giving feedback to students. I'm not going to go over too much of that. That will be recorded even if you can't access it today, and will be shared on the Google Classroom. So you'll be able to go back and watch that later. So that's going to focus on giving feedback on student work, giving feedback on Classroom, and using some of the tools in there. So it's just going a bit further than this session. The previous meets are all on YouTube, or they are also on the Techie Tea Party website. I can just show you that actually. If I just quickly type in here. So on the Techie Tea Party website, there is a tab for webinar recordings. And if we go into here, you'll see I've got the ones I recorded from last week. I didn't record the Classroom one. And they're also on the Google Classroom, which I'll show you just shortly. I'll just make sure I've got the chat up on my screen. I seem to have closed it. So what I am going to do now is I'll just go to google.com. This is always my go-to. Certainly those of you who are in East Lothian, this is the easiest way for you to get to Google Classroom, is to go to google.com. Make sure you're signed in so you can see either your initial or your picture at this top right corner. Let me just scroll along here. So you'll see my picture, and that just shows that I've signed in. If you haven't signed in, that will have a blue button that will say sign in. For those of you who are accessing on Glow, so for those of you in Mid Lothian, you will need to access your Glow Launchpad. Just pull it over. If you don't have Google Classroom here, if you go to the Mid Lothian Council Launchpad, it is the second one there. So you can always access it. And that way you just need to make sure you're signed into Glow. That is the easiest way. You can go to google.com, sign in, but it'll then ask you to sign into Glow as well, which can be a bit of a pain. So I just prefer to sign into Glow first. Then we access these 9 tiles. Now, what I like to stress to people is that these can be moved, so they do not have to stay in the same place all of the time. So if you use Classroom the most and you never access your account, you can make that your top 3. So your top 3 can be your most used. Obviously, those of you in Mid Lothian, you do not have Gmail, so you can always hide that and get rid of that. But certainly I use that one quite a lot, so I'll pop that at the top. Then I click on Classroom to open it. The web address, if you prefer that, is classroom.google.com. So you can always have that as well. Or if you use an iPad, there's an app for that. So there's a tablet app as well for Classroom. It's slightly different to what you'll see on my screen today. And then once we're into Classroom, so if you've never used it before, first time you use it, it asks if you're a student or a teacher. Obviously, we all need to choose teacher, otherwise we won't be able to create a classroom if we are a student. And screenshots of work I'll go over just later. So certainly the classroom's quite nice. I have a lot of classrooms simply because last week's training session, I was invited as a student to an awful lot of classrooms. So hopefully you won't have quite as many as I have here. So you'll just see, as I scroll, I have a lot of classrooms. Now, if you're a secondary teacher, you may also have a mass amount of classrooms depending on how you work it. And certainly students in secondary schools, just be mindful that they may also have a large quantity of classrooms for each of their subjects as well. Primary schools, you'll probably only have your classroom, or you may have classrooms as in for your own class. So if you were a P6 teacher, for example, Or you may have, I used to have for my reading groups as well, just so it was a bit easier. But I'll also show you ways of doing that without having to create a classroom for each of them. So to create a classroom, what we need to do is select this plus icon at the top right of our screens. And then we have the option to create a class. Now you will be asked to do this as part of the task for today. And then just invite me as a student, or you can just create it for your actual class. It's up to you which you would rather do. If it's more purposeful for you to create for your students, please do that. So I'm just going to give this the date as well, because then I know what one I've used today. So my demo for today. And I'm just going to create this class. Now it does take a little minute for it to load. And then when it does load, it will launch your classroom straight away. As it does that, hopefully my internet's a bit happier. Wasn't too happy in the Google Classroom session last week. Here we go. So when it loads automatically on what is called the stream. So we'll just zoom out so you can see that all here. So we have our classroom banner. Now there is a bit of a fashion on some of the Facebook groups at the moment to be creating customized banners, but I don't see the purpose. If I'm completely honest, at the moment, we can select our own themes. If you do want to create your own one, please do, but I'm not going to show you how to do that. So the select theme can mean that you can just make it something that's quite nice. I tend to use this one a lot with the laptop and the iPad, etc., just because it relates to most of what I deliver. Or you can get some quite nice ones as well, just some quite generic things in there. I'll just press cancel. And then the main thing to note here is that we have this class code. Now, as you saw earlier, I shared the class codes with you for you to join. That is the exact same as what I've got here. So this is the class code that I can share with my students. So if you have in your school group call set up so that you could send a group call to all of the Primary 7 parents, for example, you could share the class codes in that way. Or we can go into people. This is another way of inviting students. We can go to people and then we can type in our class. So we can type in our students. So if I was to type in S. Brown, and then I can add that student. Now you can type in your whole class at once, or if you have a spreadsheet with all of their Edubuzz or mc.go.scot accounts, you can then copy and paste that in and then just invite. So you don't need to do one at a time, because that's just a bit of a pain to do. Once you're happy with that, you can invite them, and then you will see at the bottom that they are invited. And what they then need to do is accept that invitation on their Classroom homepage. So when they're on Classroom looking over classes, they will have an invite to join. Likewise, you can invite co-teachers as well. So you can invite other members of staff. So if you were maybe having your senior leadership team, maybe a member of your senior leadership team wants to have an insight into what's going on in your classrooms, just invite them as a teacher. Also means that, I mean, obviously we hope that you don't leave your school, but if you were to leave, someone else has got access to that classroom so the work can continue for the students. Or if you were ever off, the work can continue in that way as well, if you've got another teacher who is an overview of that classroom. So that was the stream and the people, and that was just how we can invite people to join our classrooms. So we've got the class code here, and then you can just copy that. So highlight and copy it, and then you can share that. And then we have the people, where we can add people as co-teachers, and we can add our students in this way. So certainly when I taught younger students, so I used to teach Primary 2, I tended to invite them just to save any errors with them typing in the code and save any frustration. And that was when we were in the classroom together. Obviously things are a bit different right now. So if I come back into the stream, I'll just talk you through what this is. So the stream is an area where you can share updates. So if you are a member of the Techie Tea Party classrooms, let me just go into, here it is, courses, and I'll just show you what the stream looks like when it's a bit more populated. It operates in a way like a social media platform. You can't like posts, which does annoy me sometimes, but certainly it saves any stress with students having their posts liked, for example. So you'll see I can share updates, I can share links, I can have students are sharing here as well, and we've got students making comments. Now, I have had feedback from my own friends who use Google Classroom up in Aberdeen about the sheer quantity of comments students are leaving and how that can be a bit of a nightmare to sift through, and actually for students to see what you've posted. So there are options where you can click on the 3 dots and you can move your post to the top. Now, as soon as someone else comments, that will push your post down, but it saves it being lost amongst 20 other comments. Or if you really don't want students to be creating brand new posts on the stream, you can go into the classroom settings, which is this settings cog next to the 9 tiles. Just zoom out, and then under general, this is where we can change how students can interact with the stream. So we can have it that students can only comment. So that means they're only able to comment on the post that you have created. So it keeps a bit of organization and structure to the stream. And it also means that your posts are the only thing that's visible there. Students aren't creating new ones. You can also have it that only teachers can post or comment. I like to have it that students can interact, but obviously it's up to you. If they are being irresponsible and maybe there's not the kind of behaviour language being used that we want to see in the classroom, but it is important to stress that this is your classroom. This is just an online extension of your physical classroom. You may want to switch off commenting for students. And the last thing I'll show you is this classwork on the stream. Now, this is where I like to hide notifications. And the reason for that is when you post a new piece of work, a new assignment into your classroom, if you have it as show condensed notifications, what will happen is it will post saying that Miss Mackay has created a new assignment or posted a new assignment. And if I'm posting for the week, that's a lot of things going on to the stream. So if you hide notifications, it means that they're not getting bombarded in the stream with all these updates that they can see as soon as they go into classwork. There is a small update here at the bottom about Google Meet. I'll just say keep that off at the moment if you're not using Meet. Don't make it visible. If you're in Midlothian, you just ignore this setting, make sure that it's not visible to students. And in East Lothian, it's up to your school whether you're going to utilise this or not. And I'll just click save. So I've got hidden notifications for classwork, and I've allowed students to post and comment. If you are aware that your class code has been shared wider across East Lothian or Mid Lothian, you can only have students enter it from your own domain. So only East Lothian students can join an East Lothian classroom. You can reset the code. So you can change that code so it can't be shared any wider. I'll just hit save there. Okay, so we've got our classroom. I'll just share a quick hello in the stream. So I've got a post. And I can always schedule this. So this is something I'll go over with assignments shortly. So I can post it straight away. I can save it for later and come back and edit it, or I can schedule it. So I could go and schedule that for Wednesday, hit schedule, and then that won't post till later. So you'll see it's saved at the top here. I can click on that. I can just change it and post it straight away. So there's a bit of flexibility. I would always encourage you to schedule as much as possible because it means you can go back and edit everything. If you post it, there's only a limited amount of stuff that we can edit. So the last thing I'm really going to focus on today is this classwork section. So the classwork is where we'll create work for the students. This is where we're going to share assignments. This is where we're going to ask our classes questions, organize it into topics. So what I'm going to do, we've got this nice big button that helps us. Now, I will say this used to be a small ad in the bottom right-hand corner and it was easy to miss. But we've now got this big button that says create. So it's quite nice and self-explanatory. Along the side, we have got the Google Calendar and the Class Drive folder. So every classroom that you have has got its own Google Calendar and Class Drive folder. If I open Calendar in this other tab here, down the left-hand side of my screen, now I will zoom in so you can see this a bit better, you will see all of these different calendars that I've got running down the side, and most of these are linked to a classroom. So you'll see all of the different techie tea parties. That's people from last week who created a classroom as part of this training. And what that is, so if you think of the old planner diaries that student diaries students used to have, this is an online version. So any work that you post in Classroom, if it has a due date, will go into the calendar. And you'll see in my calendar here, I've got an assignment. Well, I've got 4 assignments, 6 assignments due, and they're all populated with different colors so I can see who has assigned some work for me. And that's just all in there. And if I come out of that, so that's just a little by the way. And then there's also a Classroom Drive folder in your Google Drive. And if we click on that, it just shows anything that is in the classroom. Obviously, this one is empty. If I come back into my Classroom Drive and I open my Techie Tea Party, maybe not that one, it's this one. I've got all my materials in here for my Google Classroom. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start creating. So I'm going to create, I always start with topics, mainly for the fact that it allows me to structure my classroom the way that I want it to be structured. So I'm a primary teacher. So I would typically have literacy, and you could always have that split into reading, writing, listening and talking. And I'll create another topic for numeracy. And the last topic I'll create, and this is something that for classroom organization is quite nice, is an archive, or you could have that as completed. So I'll just have previous work. And the reason for that is if I don't have this previous work, and you can see I can click and drag that and move these around to reorganize. Previous work means that you're not having each of these topics cluttered with work that was from a month ago or a few weeks ago. Having everything in this previous work means that that's in the past, but you're not deleting the piece of work, because if we delete it, we might lose some of the vital evidence from the students. So just popping it, clicking and dragging it into this previous work section will allow you to kind of keep an archive. And if a student, because obviously right now students aren't all accessing work at the same time, it allows them to go back and see what work they may have missed. I'm now going to create an assignment. So this assignment bit here, and I'll just go through that. So that was create and assignment within that classwork section. What I will stress right now, obviously we're sending work to homes, and this is being accessed by the student, and possibly their parent or carer is also supporting them with that. What I would say is make sure that all of your instructions are very clear and you're setting out exactly what students need to do, because Classroom may be new to quite a lot of your students, and certainly the parents likely haven't encountered Google Classroom before. So this is a massive learning curve for many of us at the moment. So make sure you give it a clear title. So you could put the date there that's posted or the date it's due in, and you could just have a little code for that. So I might do 1.1 writing, and then give my instructions, maybe go over your learning intentions, all of your usual stuff that you would share in the classroom. And I would just set out step by step what you need to do, and try and keep that same kind of structure for each of your tasks, as it just means that when a student, certainly if they're going into different classrooms, if they're in secondary or as a primary student, you're familiar with the way in which the instructions are written, and it'll just support them with that, getting the task done a bit faster. So set out clear instructions. I'm not going to do that right now because we don't want to sit and watch me think of instructions. And then this is where we can add some resources to our task. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to add resources from my Google Drive. Now, the reason I'm adding from my Google Drive and not from my PC are because all of my resources are in Google Drive format. If you've not done that before, there's some videos shared on the Google Classroom from last week on Google Docs, and there's some steps on Google Jamboard, and there's also a whole thing on Google Drive from Friday that will show you how to convert your Word documents and PowerPoint over to Google format. so you can access them later. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add from my Google Drive. And then I am going to look for writing because I have a funny feeling that, here we go, demo writing assignment. So right here, I've got the task. So this is a Google Doc. And at the moment, it says students can view the file. Now, this is where you need to make sure it's a brand new assignment. So if you're going to go back after the session and edit the assignment, you won't be able to do this. So you need to make sure it's brand new. And this is where we can make a copy for each student. So that will make their own copy that they can edit. They won't see each other's work. They will only see their document. We can make a copy for each student. I will also add some other resources that students can view. So I'll go back into my Google Drive. And let's see if I've got anything that I can add to them. So I can add this here, add that in. And this time I want students to edit the actual file. I might not be able to do that for this one. No, because we've got the warning. Hang on 2 seconds. My Google Drive will go into this, writing. Let me just search. And let's go into this one here. So I'll add this one in. Students can now view this file. This is a PDF, so it doesn't all have to be the same format. You can use PDFs, you can use Google Docs slides, any of the tools. You can attach Word documents. Just means that when a student goes in to access it, they may have to download the file to be able to edit it, then have to re-upload. So it just adds a bit extra, whereas the Google Docs ones will just open straight away. Or I can even create another document. So I can click on create and I can create a document for them to answer. So I can click on Google Docs again. It'll create a blank Google Doc and then I can edit the document for the task. Okay. Make sure you name all your documents so your students aren't getting a whole heap of untitled documents, and that will just make it a bit more difficult for them to understand what they're having to access. So clear name, and I would name it something similar to what you've given the actual task and the assignment in Google Classroom, just so it's easy for them to link over. And then I can close that. Document's still here. I can read. Oh, don't click on that. And then we can either allow students to view the file, edit the file as that collaborative document. So there's a video about that from last week, or we can make a copy for each student. So again, the making a copy is a copy for those students on their own. It will name it for them, so you don't have to worry about them putting their name on the document. It puts their name on it, and then they can just open it, and it's their own document. They own it, and it's shared with you straight away. Then down the side here, we can then start to differentiate. So this is where we've got the All Students tab. Now, if I come into my other classroom, just on the side here to show you, I load up Techie Tea Party. So I've got my assignment. And then where it says all students, this is where if we select this, so if you don't want to have 5 classrooms for each of your reading groups, you can go into all students, deselect the all, and then just select the individuals you want to have access to this. So this is here. I didn't use it, but certainly that was just because I ended up having classrooms for my numeracy groups and my literacy groups as a teacher. But right now, if we want to make things as easy as possible, you can just have it all in one classroom. So students are just checking that one classroom for updates. Once you've done that, you'll see it's assigned to 6 students. I can also assign this to multiple classrooms. So if you're teaching, say I used to be a non-class contact teacher for science and computing, I could then go in and select all the classes that I wanted to have access to that. Or if you're a secondary teacher and you're teaching multiple S1 classes, you could then assign that to all of your S1 classes without having to have them all in the one classroom space. Last thing I'll do, so I've just come back to my own demo classroom rather than assigning that to those of you in the Techie Tea Party classroom. I can now set a points value. Now, as a primary teacher, I always had this as unmarked. but you could maybe have it. Certainly if it was a spelling or a maths activity, you could always put in points. And then what you can also do is set a due date. So I've seen a lot of people are setting work at the start of the week, due in at the end of the week at the moment for all of the distance learning. So you could set the due date today as this Friday, so the 1st of May. So you could set this for Friday, and that just gives the students a bit of flexibility in when they access it. And you could set a time as the end of the day, so it will automatically go for the very last minute that exists on Friday, or you could make it that it's all due in by 12:30. You can then assign it to a topic and I'll select literacy as this is a writing task. And then there is a rubric. Now, I'm not going to go over that this morning. That's going to be something I talk about this afternoon. You can access that session later on. Obviously, it's recorded, so you'll be able to access it whenever is best suitable for you. And then at the top here, we've got this option to assign. If we assign it, we need to make sure we're completely happy with this. We don't need to edit it again. Or we can schedule. So scheduling it, even if you schedule it for an hour's time, means that you can go back and go, oh, I forgot to make a copy for every student. You can do that. If we assign it, you won't be able to do that. So by assigning it, it's finished. The only thing you can do is change it from view to edit. You cannot make a copy if you've already assigned it. We can always save it as a draft to come back to, or we can schedule. The only thing you cannot do if you schedule it is you cannot schedule for multiple classrooms. You can save it as a draft for multiple, but you cannot schedule. So I can schedule this for later today. So I could schedule this for 12 o'clock today because that's still in the future. And schedule. So that's scheduled for just half an hour's time. And the reason I've scheduled that, one, it goes up at a nice time. It doesn't go up at random times. If you are working at odd hours, obviously we're all being flexible at the moment, it means you can schedule it for the next morning. So if you were working later in the evening, you could schedule it for the next day. It means that students aren't accessing it in the evening. So you're trying to kind of keep it to a school day as well. And it also means that you can go back in, edit the assignment. And if you go, actually, I don't want to make a copy, I can allow them to edit, or I can make a copy. If I show you in my other classroom what it looks like once it's posted, I'll just schedule that there. So if I show you in the Techie Tea Party website and today's assignment, so if I go into view assignment, instructions, and if I come in to edit this, if I was to add a document, so this is me, this work has already been assigned. If I was to then add a document to this, you will see that I don't have that make a copy for each student option. So that's why it really needs to be a brand new task. Okay, I'll just delete that and save it. So that's really the main thing for me to show you today, is creating those assignments. I would always stress to schedule as much as you can. I mean, you could be scheduling a week's worth. You could be scheduling everything for next Monday, you know, just to give you a bit more flexibility in how you're approaching setting up and managing your classrooms. And the last thing to show really is this create, and you can do the questions. The quiz assignments I'm going to be showing next Tuesday in the Google Forms Creating Quizzes webinar. There are videos on that already on the Techie Tea Party website if you want to start using them already. The material, I've had people ask me, what's the point in a material? When would you use it? I've used it in the Techie Tea Party classroom to simply share, let me just delete this, to share a resource. So at the top here, I've got the Google Teacher Center. You'll see it's got a different icon on it compared to the assignment underneath. So it doesn't mean it's a task that students have to do. So I don't have it assigned to so many. If I click on this one, you'll see it's assigned to 256 people. 2 people have handed it in. This one doesn't get assigned. This isn't a task they need to do. It's just something for them to access. And then the question is quite nice. I know some people are trying to do an online register, a way of checking that students have accessed the classroom, or just a way of, you know, safeguarding. You could use the question and have a daily question, and then you could schedule different ones for the whole week so that each day you've got a different question going on. And again, you would just ask the question. You could have it as a short answer or multiple choice. If you're wanting this as your register, I wouldn't have students being able to reply to each other, just because it means that they could then just start having conversations. And again, you could schedule that. So you could schedule that for every, like a different question for every morning. And then that will just post without you having to think much about that. So you could schedule. And that's really it. If you've got any questions, please pop them into the chat on Classroom. I'm aware of the time. This is a massive session that I really should have split up a bit more into about 5 sessions, about 15 minutes every day. But thank you for your time. Please pop questions into the side. I've got one that I'm going to answer just after I've stopped recording, about screenshots. And yeah, I hope you all have a fab Monday. If you are available at 1:30, you're more than welcome to join then as well. I'm sure it could be too much for one day, but certainly access the recordings, and you can always access the recording for this session as well. So I'll just stop recording this now.